Hey everybody, this is Nathaniel Provencio at the Community Connection. I've got my very good friend, Dr. Worster, over here. What's up, Eric? How you doing, man?
Good to see you, pal.
And I've got Stephanie, Mrs. D, Miss Delussy, author of the Intentional IEP, guru of like all things special ed, Pensacola, Florida. What's going on? Stephanie, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. I love traveling, but then I don't like traveling because we have these great podcasts that we do, and I've got to like set up everything. So it's always kind of awkward a little bit trying to find the right spot. I think I've got like an ironing board, like setting up like the camera, and I've got like lights over here and all kinds of stuff, and an iron right here, just in case I have to iron. So
you never know when you need to iron. Like
that's why that shirt looks so crisp.
I tell you what, that's right, man.
That's impressive. All right, Stephanie, can you share with us a bit about your journey and how Mrs. D's Corner and the Intentional IEP came to be?
Yeah, so my teaching journey started, oh my gosh, I have been that person even when I was little that has always wanted to be a teacher. So just intrinsically, there was never a different path for me in life. It was always teaching. And special education came about when I couldn't tell you which of my mom's friends it was, but I vividly remember being at Walmart outside of the store, and my mom was talking to one of her friends, and I just remember them talking about her son needing extra help. And then something clicked in me and I was like, special ed, that's what I want to do. And so I followed that path. I have been teaching since 2010. And I left the classroom about 8 years ago, but I have taught in 5 different states. I'm been certified in 7 different states to teach special education. Mrs. D's Corner kind of came about when I couldn't find a teaching position in the state of Pennsylvania after I graduated. And so I started doing that while I was waiting to get interviews and land a job. And then once I got into the classroom, I just kind of kept going with the lessons and things I was creating for my students and kept doing it. And then once I left the classroom, I really struggled to find my place in education because I wasn't in the classroom. And so I was struggling with that, but I have always been the paperwork nerd. I have always loved all the things that come with IEPs, the data, and I know I'm the weirdo when it comes to that, and I've completely, fully embraced it. But that's how the Intentional IEP was born. I was like, I want to help special education teachers, maybe not love writing IEPs, but maybe be more effective and efficient at that whole IEP writing process. And so that is what led me to the Intentional IEP. And we published our first book with Jossie Bass last January of 2024, called The Intentional IEP.
That is fantastic. Can you see it? Do you have it nearby?
Yes.
That's fantastic. Right. Great job, Stephanie.
Thank you.
So, all right, I got to admit, Eric and I were both principals. I was an AP, or we were both principals around the same time. Eric, I don't know if you enjoyed IEP work, all those meetings. I got to tell you, Steph, I hated them.
Yeah.
Like I would do everything I could. Like my AP, like, hey, go for it, do it. If you need me, I'll be the appellate court on that one. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy the conversations,
right?
But I think what I didn't enjoy was like I had more questions than answers.
Right.
And if I were sitting at that table, the wooden fake, table or whatever with with all the 12 people around, I'd probably end up causing more trouble than I needed to. So I usually just said, all right, I got to just not say anything and just tell me where to sign or whatever. So Eric, does that make sense, man?
Yeah, I hear you. At times it can feel very bureaucratic, I think.
Yeah.
There were some great meetings where you leave knowing you helped support a child get what they need, and those were great. But that wasn't necessarily the common experience. Sometimes it was just meeting to go over progress and sign off into the next meeting, and those could feel kind of endless sometimes. So
yeah,
I hear what you're saying.
So Stephanie, how do we make IEPs magical? There you go. How do we make them magical?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think both of your experiences are very valid. And I feel like that's how a lot of educational professionals feel about it. They're like, oh, like I know this is a legal document and I don't want to mess it up, but I have so many more questions. And I love that you're like, I would have asked all the questions, and I kind of wanted to be like, I wish you would have caused a stir because it might have been a good thing.
Probably.
I think for teachers who maybe are like, I don't like IEP writing at all. Like, I'm writing IEPs the night before the meeting. I'm just throwing things together. I don't really know how all the pieces connect. The biggest thing that I think that you can do to really help yourself understand the IEP process, aside from diving in and learning more about the different parts of the IEP and just all the things that go into it, is really set yourself up with a system. I find that there's what I term IEP writing burnout, which ties into teacher burnout, which we see a lot. And so when I struggled with it myself, I think I taught for 5 years and I was like, I've got to be doing something different. Like, this is just not working for me. And so that's when I created my own, I term it the IEP writing timeline. And so it's a free download that we have at the Intentional IEP too. And really what it does is it gives you that timeline about 45 days before your annual IEP is coming due, all the things that you need to do to lead up to that IEP meeting. So when are you reaching out for collaboration? When are you collecting data? When are you starting the present levels? When are you scheduling the meeting? When are you getting that room? If you're having like a meeting room in the front office, do you have to get an interpreter? When does that happen? When do I send home that draft IEP? Which I know maybe some people are like, that's predetermination, which we can totally get into if you want to, but sending that proposed draft IEP, having a system in place where you're like, okay, I have this child's IEP coming up. I have Stephanie's IEP coming up. Maybe it's in a month. And I'm like, okay, so I have 30 days. What do I need to do? And so on my calendar, I know 30 days out, I need to send my input forms out to everybody. And then, so I send all my input forms out. While I'm waiting for them to come back, I'm collecting all the data that I have from my work samples, looking at past evaluations, looking at past progress reports to pull data for the present levels. And I'm already crafting those present levels because present levels aren't going to change. That's the data, right? And data is fact. And so that present levels is what's going to leave the breadcrumbs through the rest of the IEP. And really, it really is going to tell you what IEP goals to write, what your SDI is going to be, what accommodations and modifications you're going to need, what the LRE is going to end up being. Like, it all starts in the present levels. And I know I'm diving real deep into here, but
Yeah, sorry.
having that system set up and starting it, if you don't have it set up at the beginning of the year, it's never too late to get it started either. It's so simple. But really having that system set up really plays into just the overall IEP writing burnout and the overwhelm that comes in place when you're like, man, I have an IEP due next week and I haven't even started it. Well, once you have that system in place, you're like, I wrote the present levels already. So like, I'm good to go. I wrote that a month ago, you know? And I think that that really helps teachers feel less of that overwhelm when it comes to just the whole IEP writing process.
Well, that's sounds like a lot of work.
The front loading of it can be.
Yeah.
But anytime you front load something, you're doing all of the hard work at the beginning.
Right.
And throughout the rest of the year, all you have to do is look at your calendar. Basically, all you're going to do is pull all your students' IEP due dates, which all of your teachers are doing anyway, because when they're due. So you're already doing it. But the step you're taking next is pulling out, okay, 30 days out, 45 days out, according to the timeline.
Yeah.
When do I need to do this? And you're throwing those dates on your calendar as reminders.
So it's kind of like you got to choose your hard. It's either going to be hard now or really, really hard on the back end, right?
Right.
Wow.
I think your effectiveness will be determined by which of those two you choose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reactive, it's really hard to be effective. But you're proactive, it does take more time.
Yeah.
But I think you'll have better results.
Yeah.
Stephanie,
feel less stressed.
Yeah, absolutely. One more question for you, and this might be a little weedy. This might be in the weeds a little bit, but this is, reflecting back on my time, as an AP and as a principal when doing this, I know that there were times where there was boilerplate IEPs.
Yeah.
Where we're so overwhelmed with behavior. We're so overwhelmed with the academic challenges. And I've got 10 kids in my classroom. And for some reason, all of their IEPs are on the Tuesday at the same day of the month. Right. And I didn't have a system in place.
Right.
Like Stephanie was just talking about. And I kind of like do a little copy paste, and and then the kind of demographic with my parents, they don't really bring an advocate or a lawyer, and
Right.
I don't even know if they read the IEPs, and we're just trying to get through. I'm not saying that has ever happened.
It
I'm
does happen.
just saying that it could happen, right? So
It does.
just can you just talk a little bit about that? And look, grace is extended 1,000%, right?
Judgment-free zone.
Judgment free.
We have all best practice is we don't copy and paste, right? But we've all done it. And I always say this, I will never throw anyone under the bus except for myself. I've copy pasted because when you don't know better, you don't know better, right? When you know better, you do better. And so I think that it's so hard when you're in the weeds and you're overwhelmed with behaviors and IEPs are coming up and maybe state testing is coming, or you have school benchmarks that are right around the corner, progress reports are due. It's really hard to lose sight and honestly forget that you have these due dates coming. Is copying and pasting the best thing to do? No. Does it happen? Yes, because I think a lot of us are just surviving at certain points, right?
Sure.
And that's okay. But we have to at some point look at it in the terms of if the student's IEP isn't individualized, am I really giving them the behavior supports that they need in the classroom? Or am I seeing these behaviors in the classroom because they don't have the right supports?
Yeah.
So kind of flipping that in your mind and thinking about it in a phrasing or wording of how can I make my classroom function better or easier by what I'm writing into these IEPs? Because when you put the right supports into student IEPs, you're going to see success in the classroom, whether that's behaviors, academics, you're really going to see that switch. So if we don't take the time to make change, even when we're in the weeds, we're going to continue to stay in the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great answer. Great answer.
I think people copy and paste because they don't know any other way to do it, at least not economically with their time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you recommend? Like, what are some great tools or resources for creating those effective IEPs? Anything from your book that might help?
I love templates for all the things. Present level templates. So you're copying and pasting, but you're not copying and pasting verbatim. You're copying and pasting phrases, changing out the name and the data points, right? So half the work's already done for you. You're already collecting your data. You already have it. You're just plugging it in. So it's plug and play. You're spending less time on those present levels, but you're being more strategic about how you're writing it, what's going into it. So you're kind of getting yourself out of the weeds while you're in the weeds. So I love a good template for all the things. You can use IEP goal banks, which are copy and paste. You just, there's so much we could do a whole episode on writing IEP goals, which I could nerd out hardcore on this, but
we'll talk about goals. We'll talk about it.
Okay. Well, then I'll hold back a little bit on IEP goals, but copying and pasting the skill from an IEP goal and then changing out the criteria to meet the data in the present levels. So I think it's okay to copy and paste. It just is how you do it. There's a practice way to do it correctly instead of verbatim from one IEP to the other.
Is it structural or informative? Because if it's structural, that's fine. It's the same structure.
Right.
A good house can work. It's just what are you filling that house with?
Right.
Yeah.
Anything in your book about that?
We talk about using templates, using goal banks, switching out criteria, getting baseline data. And I think in the book, I really talk about how all the different pieces connect. So once you have the present levels, what does that mean for the rest of the IEP? So we dive pretty good into that in the book.
Great.
That's awesome. All right, let's talk about goals. All right. So, all right, like one of the most I don't know, I don't want to say common, but one of the most one disability that I saw a lot and I see a lot is SLD, specific learning disability. It kind of covers a lot of gambit. Sometimes it's dysgraphia, maybe dyslexia, or maybe it's dyscalculia, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The challenge sometimes that I've seen with like SLD specifically is that the goals are oftentimes not tethered to standards. And the challenge I see is that if a child has an IEP and individualized supports and resources, then why isn't sometimes the goals rigorous as the standards? And sometimes there's almost like, well, we're going to like, oh, I hate to say this word too, like dumb down the IEP goals so the kid can meet the goals, but it's not meeting the demands of the standard. Gosh, am I making sense at all? Does this make sense?
You are. And I'm so glad that you asked this question, because I'm going to give you the right wording for why what's happening is happening.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And this is actually something that I teach about all the time and have been talking about, because I hear a lot from teachers. My admin wants me to write standards aligned IEPs, but my 3rd grade student is working on a kindergarten level. Like, I can't in good conscience write them a 3rd grade math standard goal.
Right.
So, okay, here's how it all works. When you write IEP goals, we're writing IEP goals for skills, right? Standards are skills that are aligned to our grade level curriculum. And so where you want to start when you're writing your IEP goals and how you write standards aligned IEP goals for students that are grade levels behind is you have your present levels. So you have all of your baseline data and your present levels. That's going to tell you what skills should I be working on next. Well, maybe Stephanie's in 3rd grade. They're working on double-digit multiplication. Stephanie's currently trying to figure out one-to-one correspondence. So I have 2 fingers up. She's trying to figure out that this means 2. Well, there's a huge gap of skills that Stephanie has to learn between one-to-one correspondence and double-digit multiplication, right?
Yeah, true.
So what they do, or what you should be doing then when there's that huge gap, we're not going to write an IEP goal for double-digit multiplication. We're not even going to write an IEP goal for single-digit multiplication. We're going to use the prerequisite skills for double-digit multiplication, or just multiplication in general, and write IEP goals for that skill. So we're writing prerequisite skill IEP goals that are tied to a standard. So you don't just want to say, okay, well, Stephanie's working on one-to-one correspondence, so I'm going to write a goal for that. You are going to make it more rigorous. So you have to figure out what are the steps, right? So what are the steps between one-to-one correspondence and multiplication? What all do they need to learn? Well, they have to learn one-to-one correspondence. They have to learn single-digit addition. They have to learn how to regroup. They have to learn groups of numbers, and multiples are multiplication. And so there's more to it in between there, but just off the top of my head. So maybe I'm going to say, okay, based off of the present level data, saying this is where she is with the baseline. And then off of last year's IEP goals, she progressed in math, maybe about 40%. So she gained 40% mastery. So that helps me with the criteria. So I know she's probably going to end up, well, I don't know if you can see me, but here's where she is. Here's where she needs to be. We're probably going to end up somewhere here. So that might be, we're going to go from one-to-one correspondence to we're going to work on groups of numbers, and we're going to relate multiplication to these groups of numbers. So it might not be, from the outside looking in, rigorous 3rd grade content as the standard is aligning, but for that student, it is, and it is directly aligned to the grade level standards.
Makes sense. And you could apply that the same with
anything,
literacy or reading.
Yep.
Yeah, we have to do these 3rd grade standards, ask and answer questions or whatever. But the child's not able to decode kindergarten text. What are the skills needed in order to get that? Oh, great. You just clarified it for me.
Yeah, you can do it with fine motor, gross, really anything. You just use developmentally, because there's no standards for those, right? So you just use developmentally appropriate lists, like from the CEC or CDC or whatever, and then go up the line. And where is the student? Where are their peers? Where do I think they're going to land within this year? And then you're going to write goals for that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Nathaniel, do you want to ask about collaboration?
I think you're going to ask about collaboration.
Fair enough. For an IEP to be effective, it needs to be a partnership between families and the school. How do you get everybody on that same page?
I love this question also. And one of the things that my book really taught is actually a team approach for better outcomes for their families and for students. So there's a big connection between writing IEPs and doing it with a collaborative approach. I very strongly believe that writing IEPs is not solely the responsibility of the special education teacher, even though it so oftentimes is their responsibility or feels that way.
Mhm.
Um, Not only should the families be included in the process, because in the IDEA federal law, they're the first ones listed on the team members as team members of the IEP team, parents, right? But the gen ed teachers in the building, the administrators in the building, the specialists that all work with the students, so related services, OT, PT, speech, whoever it may be, the specials teachers, music, art, gym, like they all have to be on the same page as well when it comes to writing that IEP. So I don't think it's just how do I get the parents involved? It's how do I get all of the team members involved in this process and not just to write it, but also then to implement it. Specifically, when it comes to fostering collaboration between home and school, I think, and we hear this so often, is, call home, give them good news all the time. And I think that's great. You want to build that rapport with the families. And so giving them that good news is really good. I also think that, um, reaching out to them, sending home the proposed draft IEP with the present levels and your draft proposed goals is also a really great way. And I know some states actually require this, some states don't, but best practice shows us that proposed draft IEPs really help level the playing field when it comes to parents because they're coming to the table with the same information that the rest of the IEP team has. So they're not
Yeah.
coming in blind. And so sending that to them, I say a minimum of 3 school days before the IEP meeting, sending that to them, letting them know you're going to check in before the IEP meeting to see if they have any questions. Do you want to make any changes? Are we in alignment with your priorities for skills that we're going to learn this year, with your values, where you see your student long term? So checking in with them that way. But even before that, sending out that parent input form around that 45 to 30-day mark before the IEP meeting, going back to our IEP writing timeline, right? Sending out that input form and asking them what's working at home, what's not working at home, what do you want to see your student working on? And really just inviting them in to be a part of the process. And I was working with another special education teacher actually yesterday, and she was like, "We have to walk into IEP meetings with the aura of just being collaboration over confrontation." And so I think
Mm.
that really, when you lead with collaboration, it's more inviting and it feels more safe for families to want to be a part of the process with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And man, that's a topic that's near and dear to me, about community engagement and making sure families have a voice at the table and not a arbitrary kind of like
Oh, no.
pandering kind of
Yeah,
voice where it's like, oh, we really love your opinion. Sign here. It's
right.
it's it's like, you know,
What do
what
you think?
what do you think?
Right.
And I got to tell you something. I'm a parent, and when I put the dad hat on, and I think about that big ass table,
Mhm.
the IEP table, right? It's scary. I'm a I look, I've got a couple degrees. I've been in education and leadership for 25 years. It would still be intimidating for me.
Yeah,
And I know what I'm talking about.
right.
But I've got, this math teacher over here. I've got special ed teacher. I've got social worker over here. I've got the AP. I've got these people that I've never seen in my life. And we're all sitting around this table to talk about my precious child. And I don't know half of these acronyms that these people are talking
Yeah,
about. So yeah, I got the present level. I got the draft IEP the day before, but I got to work till 8 o'clock at night.
yeah.
And and like sometimes I'm not even home. So what would be some of your suggestions to kind of let the school know that this is such an opportunity for great customer service and customer experience? What are some other things that you've seen along the way that also helps kind of ease that kind of like the affective filter, if you will, for parents at that dreaded IEP table?
Yeah. I think that I think perspective, honestly, just shifting your perspective of we all know when we come to IEP meetings, they're very emotionally charged. And so I know ahead of time if a parent's going to come in and be so mad and just come guns a-blazing.
Yeah.
Very rightfully so, because as a mom, I would be too if I felt like my child wasn't getting what they deserved. And so knowing that they're not coming at us as like personally,
Hmm.
they're advocating out of love, and the emotions that they are having is coming out of love for their child, and that they don't know the process. They're overwhelmed with emotion. And so I think if as professionals, if we could just shift our mindset a little bit, and if we're feeling overwhelmed, saying, let's take a 5-minute break. I think that just giving everyone a breather, let's all get a drink of water, go walk the hall for a minute. Or actually, I don't know if you can see it in here. Let me go grab it.
Okay.
One thing that I have seen very effective is, and this is just an example, so this is a stock photo, but having a picture of the student at the
Yeah.
IEP meeting on the table, and this just says, I am the I in IEP, I think
I like it.
really changes
Mhm.
the tone of the meeting. We're not just here for a piece of paper. We're actually here for a human life and to make it better for them to be successful. So I think those two things, just shifting your mindset a little bit and trying to put yourself in their shoes, um, and realize that it's not personal against you. They don't have a vendetta against you. They have past experiences that they're coming, and I hate to call it baggage, but
Hmm.
past baggage from past experiences, whether that be their schooling experience
Mhm.
or
Yep.
from another IEP team or another school. They're coming to the table with things that have nothing to do with us, but they're coming to the table with the same end game in mind. They want to get the child the services that they're so rightfully deserve to. And then again, remembering that we're here for a child, not a piece of paper.
I love it. I love that. Eric?
Stephanie, I want to ask you a question about staying current with special
Yeah.
education practices, but I think I want to phrase it first by asking a very tough question, which is what do you think the goal of special education should be?
Oh, you know, that's a great question. I would say part of me would believes that the purpose of special education, and I could spit off like IDEA law says the purpose of
Hmm.
special education is for further education, employment, and independent living. And I do believe that. Um, for some students, the purpose of special education is to get them caught up to their peers. I
Yeah.
think the purpose for each student is different. I think the purpose of an IEP and the services that we provide to our students and their families is really to help them succeed to the best of their ability, with as much as we can do as possible to help get them there.
Yeah.
So on that, and I agree with that as a former special educator. I
Yeah.
was very proud. I don't know if I should have been, but I was when students no longer required an IEP
Yeah.
because they met their goals and they were released from the
Yep.
special education program. I know we have changed just from when I was going to school what special education was to where it was when I was teaching 20 years ago to what it is now. How can our educators stay informed with what are the best and most current practices and how we view special education?
Yeah. So I think the best thing that you can do is attend professional development sessions, listen to other educators in and out of the classroom. I do think that it's helpful to still have, as someone who's no longer in the classroom as a special education teacher, it is still very much top of mind for me to know how my peers feel who are still in the classroom. So if I plan on leaving the classroom, keeping in touch with what's really going on in the classroom right now, right? But also from these experts who spend their entire educational careers researching and learning more about the brain and special education and how different disabilities affect people. I think getting a whole picture of all of the things is really helpful. Joining. So there's lots of different Facebook groups where you can collaborate with other special education teachers. There's podcasts out there that you can listen to learn more. There's lots of books. I'm also a member of the Council for Exceptional Children. And so they do a lot of great webinars, and they do their own conference every year. And so I think it's just a matter of finding your people and how you learn best, and then just never stop learning.
Yeah, Stephanie, I was in a school today, and they had a very large special education program, urban city school. I think they had maybe 6 special education classrooms, and of those 6, 5 of the 6 of the teachers were long-term subs.
It's not uncommon.
The Great Resignation is primarily special education teachers.
Yeah.
A special education teacher, this just makes sense, right? Is on the same pay scale as a 3rd grade teacher. Ish. The paperwork, right? The responsibility is significantly more than your general ed teacher. Right. The liability is exceptionally more than your typical general ed 3rd grade classroom. The law, the legal aspects, everything. Why are we not paying every single special education teacher 6 figures for one thing, and wiping out their debt if they're going to go into special education? I mean, we've got a couple of secretaries of education has been on this show. I mean, that's where federal funds should be going.
Yeah.
So how do we know that that's the reality, and like 5 out of 6 classrooms, they're long-term subs. Yeah. Any advice? I mean, like, how do we recruit better? How do we retain better? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think for some people you can throw money at them and they'll stay. Yeah. But I think it really, and this I think is just I don't want to call it a blanket statement, but for all teachers, like, we just want to be recognized for what we're doing right. We're always told what we're doing wrong, what we're not doing right, what we could be better at. And so I think if we feel appreciated, you know that saying, someone who feels appreciated will always do more than what's expected. Yeah. Teachers, we get in this for the kids. We stay for the kids at the detriment of our own mental health a lot of the time. And so I think a big part of why teachers are leaving, myself included, why I left the classroom, was my mental health. But I didn't feel supported in the classroom. My administrator, as long as I was quiet and I kept quiet, I was good. The minute I made a peep, I was in trouble. Unfortunately, I don't think that is the norm everywhere, but I think a lot of special education teachers have been in that place as well. And so I think just being supported and not sending the kids back from the office with a pack of Legos or a lollipop, I think too is helpful. I think just feeling supported from the district, not even just from administration, but from the district as a whole. We don't have the budget for that. We don't have money for that. We can't get you that. Special education classrooms don't have curriculum, most of them. They don't. Just teach the general ed curriculum. Okay, well, how am I supposed to teach that when Stephanie is in 3rd grade, but she's working on kindergarten? So I think I don't think throwing money at teachers is going to solve the problem. I think it would help. I think teachers are vastly underpaid, but I think that there is a deeper root cause here than just.
Yeah. I'd still pay you $100,000.
I don't know if I would go back in the classroom though for $100,000.
I'll give you $200,000, Stephanie. Come on to Virginia. Let's go.
I actually taught in Virginia my first year.
Where in Virginia? Where?
I was in Front Royal, Virginia.
Front Royal. Know exactly where that is. Yeah.
So Stephanie, what would an ideal situation look like for our special educators that might make them more interested in the position or want to stay?
I think.
What would have made you want to stay?
What would have made me want to stay? I think that just the support from my building administrator would have been great if I came to my administrator with an issue or a problem, instead of brushing it off, actually trying to help me solve the problem. Maybe not that person helping me, but giving me a next step person, like knowing a chain of command of like, okay, you're having this issue, here's where you can go, or providing me with the resources so I can solve my own issues if you're not able to help me. Because I know administrators, y'all have so much other stuff to do and worry about, like you solely cannot just help special education teachers. But I think just giving us the resources, I think giving us a curriculum and not changing it every year would also be very helpful. And staffing our rooms, which that's, we're talking about staffing here, but I think paraprofessionals are the backbone of special education. I think they're more vastly underpaid than special education teachers are.
Give them $100,000 too. Boom, there you go.
Money away, like it's.
I'm like Oprah. You get a grant. You get 100 grand.
That's
Yeah,
exactly what I was thinking. But I think it also comes down to this back to the systems that the special education teacher has in place for the workload. Some teachers are going to need more help with the workload. Some aren't. And it's not a new versus veteran teacher thing. It's very person to person. And I think it just comes down to that support aspect.
Awesome.
And that looks very different person to person.
Yeah. It's an important question because like Nathaniel said, in many of our neediest classrooms, there are the least experienced or qualified people. And that's a little bit terrifying.
Yes, very
terrifying. Stephanie, now it's time to ask you the hardest question of the podcast. Are you ready?
I don't know. Maybe.
Special ed is notorious for those TLAs, those 3-letter acronyms, sometimes 4-letter acronyms.
You're going to start with TLA because I don't even know.
No, I didn't know that.
Did you like that one? 3-letter acronym.
Yep.
So I'm going to read you 10 acronyms that all have to do with the special ed. And I want to see if you know what they are. Are you ready?
I'm going to try and be ready.
Okay, here we go. So like if I said IEP, you would say?
Visualized Education Program.
That's how we go. All right, are you ready? Eric, are you ready too? In case you raise your hand if you know what it is, Eric. Okay.
Got it. Yep.
All right, ready? FAPE, Stephanie.
Free appropriate public education.
LRE.
The least restrictive environment.
IDEA.
That's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
BIP.
The Behavior Intervention Plan.
IFSP.
That's the Individualized Family Service Plan.
Damn, that's good. PLAAFP.
The present levels of academic and functional performance.
OSEP.
The Office of Special Education, something with the Office of Special Education, something.
You got it. Programs. ESY. ESY.
Extended School Year.
AT.
Assistive Technology.
RTI.
Response to Intervention.
Yeah. You nailed it.
So what does TLA stand for? Or was that, did you just make that up?
3-letter acronym.
Oh, okay. You just made it up. Okay. I was like, what is that? Because I'm going to need to know that at some point.
Great job,
Stephanie. Great job.
3 of those I did not know. So great job finding those for you. And Stephanie, well done.
Well done. Well done.
Stephanie, before I let you go, I think I have just a couple of final ones. First, anything like what has been the most rewarding part for you of working and advocating for our special educators?
Oh, that's such a great question. I feel like I say that with everything, but
all we do is ask great questions on the community connection.
You really do have some really good questions. I think the best part of the work that I get to do really stems from being in the classroom, and it's just making the difference in the lives of our students. That is why I still come to work every day. It's still why I am an IEP coach to help teachers, because I feel like if I'm able to help one teacher, on average, I'm helping about 17 students a school year. And so I'm still able to help make a difference. Even if that's only one student, I feel like I'm still doing something right.
Yeah. Any words to inspire our special educators watching this when it comes out?
Yeah, so I'm going to share the best piece of advice with you that I ever got. And it was the first year that I taught in a self-contained setting, but it also is for any LRE. So for any least restrictive environment, this advice is just solid advice. So this was my first year when I taught in a self-contained unit, a life skills classroom in Texas. The art facilitator came to me, and she must have been able to tell that I was feeling real anxious. And she said, it's okay if your successful day looks like the kids getting off the bus, eating lunch, and making it home on the right bus. That's a successful day. And some days that's all that's going to get done. And that's okay, because that's still a successful day. Tomorrow is a new day. We're going to start fresh. So that was the best piece of advice. And so I hope that that also inspires somebody else.
Love it.
Awesome.
Where can we find you?
I am on all the things except TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. You can find me at The Intentional IEP on Instagram, theintentionaliep.com, and also The Intentional IEP on Facebook.
And that book again?
Yep, the book is called, you just search The Intentional IEP. There's a link on our website, but if you go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, and search The Intentional IEP, it'll pop up.
Love it.
Outstanding. Stephanie Delussy, you are just an outstanding advocate for kids, not only students in special education, but I think all education. So thank you for your advocacy and your attitude, your positive attitude, and doing what you can to just help all of our learners do the best that they can be. Thanks for joining us on the Community Connection, okay?